Hello, this is going to be a brief overview of my concoction pathfinder character. This is a crit stacking, fulminating concoction with Queen of the Forest for just blasting through Sanctum, doing a lot of damage and having a lot of move speed. I'll quickly start off by saying that I played this character, Shattering Concoction, for a very long time before I swapped to fulminating concoction. I'll go over quickly why I swapped later on in the video, but a lot of what I say will be applicable to both of these things. You just have to rejuggle the passive tree a little bit, but really they're super easy to swap between. Change a couple pieces of gear, you should be good to go. Really, I think a lot of this stuff is transferable. I'll go over my gear real quick. I won't explain things too in depth because a lot of creators have covered variants of this build, and they've done so in a much better way than I probably will be able to in this video. So I have a 270% Widow Hail on my quiver. I have +2 level of prod skills, obviously. Other than that, my quiver is quite mediocre. I have dexterity to fix my attributes really easily, but really you can do much better. I got this for super cheap. This character overall is probably 15 to 20 div if you exclude the ingenuity. I'll get to that in a second. Like I mentioned, Queen of the Forest, so the rest of our gear pieces are really going to reflect that. On the boots, movement speed, not present. We have triple res, max life, and just a lot of evasion rating because that contributes to our movement speed. Gloves, same sort of deal. Helmet, we have energy shield because this gets converted into evasion due to subterfuge mask. I'll go over the passive tree in a second. Amulet, this is probably the most important part for damage, barring the quiver. +3 prod skills, kind of mandatory here. I would just get +3 prod skills. Anything else you can get is kind of a bonus. I have crit damage bonus, which is obviously great, and evasion rating, so this is pretty good. For definitely very good for what I bought it at. So yeah, get whatever you can, but the +3 prod skills is pretty mandatory. For my rings, I have my rings set up in a way that I benefit the most from ingenuity. So I have some resistances set up on them, but I also have a rarity. Lightning damage, obviously swap that to cold damage if you're running shattering concoction. Main thing here is honestly evasion. You can see I have no max life on this because I don't care. I just buff a lot of evasion with ingenuity. This really helps with the movement speed, and these rings are huge contributors to my movement speed. I would definitely work around this and do something else different if I did have an ingenuity, but this is what I have. I have some other rings that I used previously as well. The ingenuity itself, completely unnecessary. This is literally just for my movement speed, to be honest. Like, it does do more damage in a in like a shorter time frame, right? But it messes up your flash sustain quite significantly, to be honest. So if you want to do more single target damage and your overall damage profile is not quite at the level of like a super high investment build, then you can totally drop the ingenuity. I'd probably recommend you drop the ingenuity, to be honest, and just use like a mail belt or a fine belt. These will help with reduced flash charges used or gain flat charges per second. That will be much more useful than this ingenuity. But if you're running Sanctum and you just want to move fast, ingenuity is fantastic, right? My mana flask, gain X charges per second. A couple of configurations you can work with this, such as reduced charges used. There's also gain or increased charges gained. I think that's probably the worst of the three, but you can play around with it a little bit. I think that concludes things for the gear. I will move into my passive tree, I guess. The Ascendancy tree, very standard. I'm not taking Enduring Elixirs, again, because survivability is really not the focus of my build at all. So I've come down here to take Running Assault for fluidity, but other than that, everything is extremely standard. Passive tree, I won't go over every node, but main highlights, I just take as much evasion as I can, basically. This node here is huge for evasion. Over here, we take this Herald node. Heralds in this build do very little for us. I only have Lightning Herald on. When I was doing Shattering Concoction, I had Herald Device. This is just for the damage, really, nothing else. Take some crit, basically. Take as much crit as we can on the way. All the crit nodes do quite a bit for us. I take all the lightning nodes over here as well, because this is my fulminating concoction. If you are playing Shattering Concoction, the way that I would build this tree differently is I would maybe juggle around a few things regarding the penetration over here. I actually can't remember if I even took this. I do remember now. I didn't take this, right? The way that I pathed with my fulminating concoction is by taking these nodes over here for increased effect of cold exposure, basically, and penetration. And then coming up all the way over here, grabbing these jewel sockets is a huge bonus to our damage. Then coming up here and then taking Endless Blizzard and Glaciation. I think this is probably the most damage that you get out of the setup. Make sure to continue taking all the crit and stuff like that. But you know, you don't need this, and you definitely don't need this. You just have to sacrifice, unfortunately, a lot of points pathing up with the attributes here. It's not ideal, but the jewel sockets really are quite a bit of damage as well. I'll go over a couple final things with my tree. So I have a weapon swap setup. The weapon swap, I've just taken all the evasion I possibly can, and I'll briefly demonstrate why. So my weapon swap is to swap to a shield. The shield is pretty garbage. I bought it for like 1 exalted, but really it's just a shield I can use that has some amount of evasion on it. I should actually fix my attribute resistance. I haven't played this build in a while. I just ran 1 Sanctum really just to get back into things, but I haven't played this build in a second. But yeah, you can see that I have my evasion set up here. Some evasion on the shield, and the purpose of this is so I move just a little bit faster when I have this activated. You can see I'm relatively speedy. If I go into my move speed, I'm at 117%. It would be higher if I was actually being able to use my my gloves here, but I've messed up my attribute somehow. But yeah, you swap back and we're at about 80%, so we're still reasonably speedy, and it's fine to sort of just keep going like that. But really, if you want to run around, this is the way to set up. And it's ideal because you have shield charge and blink set up as well, so you can really cover some pretty vast distances quite easily. The other thing with the passive tree, I guess, jewels to cover. All my jewels are fairly standard. I have evasion rating for movement speed, increased crit damage bonus for attack damage, and then you know, attack damage or elemental damage, attack speed with bows, proj damage, all of that stuff. Basically, as much damage as you can fit in reasonably. All my jewels were extremely cheap. I got all of them for extremely cheap, with the exception of one. This one over here, I got this for 1 divine. To me, this is probably worth more than 1 divine. This is quite a lot of damage. You can see that we have attack damage, proj damage, and crit bonus, or crit damage bonus for attack damage for the notables, and we grab quite a few notables. I probably would not take this attack speed cluster over here. I'd probably just take this attack speed for Falcon technique, which would be more damage down here. But I think with the crit damage bonus, this is probably more damage, at least more damage per hit, which is really what I care about, because attack speed is a little bit of a fake stat on a concoction build, in my opinion. Yeah, that's kind of it. The jewels, I think, are pretty standard. Just focus on crit. Evasion, if you're running the Queen of the Forest setup, doesn't jack up the price by too much. And then any other damage you can get, proj, you know, attack speed, anything like that. That should do fine. Yeah. I think that's kind of it in terms of what I have to cover for this. Yeah, I can't really think of anything else, particularly for the tree. Yeah. I guess final thing to show, the skills. So tooltip DPS, not great, to be honest. And that's just because a lot of the damage comes from the fact that we shock and we buff off our shock magnitude as well. So basically, the shattering concoction will do a lot more damage on the initial hit because it has more base crit chance. But you know, on subsequent hits, your fulminating concoction will really start to pull ahead. So that's where I think the strength of the skill really comes in. The setup is very standard, just martial, scatter, close combat, lightning mastery, lightning infusion. You can replace close combat with some other way to buff up the damage. I think this is probably the best for fulminating concoction, but there are some other things you can do, particularly with shattering concoction, like ice bite and stuff like that, really. Apart from the the standard skills. I have wind dancer, I have take mark. This just helps with the initial crit and doing some extra damage. Apart from that, because of the increased shock effect. While I'm actually doing this Sanctum, I'll just activate Grim Feast just for the extra energy shield. It's not really relevant. It's like a completely unnecessary switch, if I'm being completely honest here. But yeah, Alchemist Boon, very helpful for when you're trying to sustain fast charges. I Winter, my base crit on the fulminating concoction is 36%, so I do actually think the Eye of Winter is useful, but when I was on my shattering concoction, my base crit was around 57%, so that became a lot more useful, or a lot less useful rather, right? So now I am throwing them out. Previously, I wasn't really using the skill, because you just crit so often on your own. I think that's kind of it that I have to cover. If there are any questions, I'll answer them. But yeah, this is a really good build. I recommend. I can wholeheartedly recommend this without any hesitation now that GGG has been kind of clear on their balance philosophy for the rest of this league. I mean, we got hit with a tiny nerf. This nerf didn't affect me in the slightest, right? But I guess it affects the build overall. But really, it's plenty strong without it. Yeah, I wholeheartedly recommend either this build or the Shattering Concoction. If I had to choose between the two, I'd probably choose the Shattering Concoction, to be honest. It's way more satisfying. The freeze is just fantastic. The reason why I switched to fulminating Concoction is, like I was mentioning, it's more damage beyond the first hit. And this character, again, farms Sanctums with Desperate Alliance, right? And because of that, I just wanted to make sure absolutely 100% I could kill Zarok no matter what boons I took, basically, and it would be fine and not a huge problem because I'm running Ingenuity, especially, not a huge problem with my Flash Sustain or anything like that. So that's the only reason I swapped. The freeze is super nice, the skill is way more satisfying. I highly recommend Shattering Concoction. I'll link a few videos. DS Lily's video, obviously, is for a mapping setup, and then another video that I watched from a creator, Invincibrew, who really did a good comparison in outlining the differences between Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder, and how you can integrate those into a fulminating concoction setup and a shattering concoction setup. He also compared the two and helped me sort of make up my mind on swapping to fulminating concoction, which I do think is overall better for what I'm trying to do. But yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah, any questions, let me know.